Cameron's information is there on the home screen. You're going to want to take his information. He is very easy to work with. He's a great technology partner, very responsive, and loves to dive into projects with Digital Watchdog and specifically DW Spectrum. So, Cameron, why don't you tell us about SoundSecure?
Sure. Thank you, Patrick, for that kind introduction. Good morning, everyone, from sunny Los Angeles, where today it's a little bit overcast, but we'll push through nonetheless. We don't do overcast weather all that great out here in Southern California, but we'll be just fine. SoundSecure is a company that manufactures audio products for security systems. Like Patrick mentioned, we partner very well with Digital Watchdog on both the hardware side for camera connections and also on the Spectrum side. And you'll see some great new features that are being added to an upcoming release of Spectrum that are focused on audio. And you can do some cool new things with audio that are going to help with system layouts and simplify a lot of installations. My contact information is right here. You can also go to our website for more information, which is just the domain on my email address, sound-secure.com. Find out all kinds of information about how to hook up audio, frequently asked questions, and we'll see some of that in a few slides here. So to dive into some high-level information about what we do, like I mentioned, we are a manufacturer of audio technologies for video security systems. And the best way to think about what we do is to think of your cell phone. So if you've got your cell phone handy, open it up, open up the camera on your cell phone, swipe over to the video. So you're about to record a video on your phone and hit record for a couple seconds on your phone. Now, if you let your phone record for a couple seconds and then stop and then play it back, you'll notice that your phone recorded audio automatically. You could probably hear my voice on there if you replayed it. So your phone's recording audio always with video, but most commercial security cameras don't do that by themselves, right? They have the capability, they have inputs, outputs, but they don't automatically do that. So SoundSecure manufactures products that gives your video system that audio capability, just like your cell phone does. One thing we're very proud of is that we manufacture products here in the United States. Most of it is local here in Southern California. So when you're looking to utilize our audio products with a Watchdog system, you don't have to worry about NDAA compliance. Knock on wood, we have not been hit with the same kind of supply chain issues that a lot of the industry has for other types of products. So there's a great advantage in using our technology because it's manufactured in the United States. And then when we work with any kind of government project or law enforcement project in particular, that's either a requirement or a huge bonus for our customer base to have the American flag printed on our products and our packaging. So why would you use audio with a camera system or a Watchdog system? We'll look at it in two ways. One, the audio out on a camera, and then in a minute, we'll look at the audio in and sound pickup. So here we're showing a new amplifier product of ours, part number is SS820, and it hooks up to the audio out connection on a camera to give a talk down capability or a drive a speaker through the camera's connection to your network. So now you have a remote opportunity, a remote capability to make an announcement, give an alert, send a warning from an operator. Can be indoor, can be outdoor. Predominantly, you're seeing the examples here, they're outdoors. So you can hook up a horn or a very powerful speaker. This one will go to up to 40 watts of power. And you don't then need to physically intervene when you see an intrusion, a theft that's about to happen, a security event. So for example, you've probably seen the videos of guys late at night in hoodies or ski masks or whatever the stereotype is, running up to a roll gate, running up to a container, doing a smash and grab, where then you have the capability to remotely say, this area is being monitored with live surveillance, get out of here, we're notifying the cops and they'll be here in 30 seconds. So you remotely have the capability now to interdict in a security event and hopefully deter a theft or an intrusion from happening in the first place. So think about what this would be like in a typical system. Let's say you have a straightforward analytic like a line crossing or boundary analytic or a loitering detection. If you've got guys hanging out behind a convenience store late at night drinking or smoking or doing things you don't want them doing in an area they shouldn't be in. You then can remotely say, hey, we can activate this analytic. We can activate this message either through live monitoring or a recorded message. And then we've also worked with other technology partners like an Illuminar for a lighting company, where you have an alert go off with sound and you have a light fire on. So now you're flooding the area with light, you're flooding it with sound, you have the video scene, and folks know they're being monitored. Folks know that the cameras are actually watching them, and they're not dummy cameras, or it's not the kind of thing where most cameras aren't monitored. They know that in that particular situation, they're being monitored and they ought to get out of there. So this gives a great capability to your system for a deterrence factor. Where do we see this used most commonly? You see a few examples here on the bottom. Any kind of perimeter, any kind of fence line protection that you need, restricted areas where folks might be trying to get around a fence line or find a way in that's not through the main entrance. We see a lot of opportunity in parking lots, in car dealerships, where folks might come on after hours to have a look at the vehicles, but really they're looking to steal parts or any kind of hot item that might be in demand on the secondhand market at that time. We see safe city applications where if there are municipal areas that have public gatherings or have higher crime rates, you have this capability to then interdict and intercede remotely. We see a lot of opportunity as well with the mobile trailer applications that you'll see in a lot of parking lots nowadays. So there's a big benefit in just hooking up the hardware to a capability that your cameras already have. And all we're doing in this instance is taking a piece of hardware, wiring it up to the audio out on a Watchdog camera, and driving a speaker to give you that capability. Now let's look at the flip side of that, the flip side in terms of the signal path, where you have audio in. So instead of a speaker, now we're using a microphone hooked up to the audio in on the camera. Slightly different applications that we're going to see here, slightly different use cases. In this case, the audio in gives you better context, information, and evidence collection than just a video feed will. So think about if you have our first example here of a law enforcement interview room, and you have just a video feed of an officer talking to a suspect. Maybe the officer's taking some notes about what's being said, but if you have that live recording, and then you can flag the parts of the interview that give you that key information that solves a crime or gives you great witness testimony that you want to use in the future, you have that recording right there. It simplifies the investigation. It gives you better information. And law enforcement is probably the most common use in the industry of using audio in this case, microphones with video systems. If you look at the other examples here, retail and quick service restaurants, think about what they have in common here is you have a employee interacting with a client or a customer, generally at a point of sale. If there is a theft or a robbery, God forbid, an assault, chances are it's going to happen around a point of sale. So in retail, you have audio at a cash register. You can detect any kind of information that comes up at a robbery. So for example, if Patrick and I go and rob a convenience store, and I hold up the cashier and I yell, "Patrick, cover the back door." Now we know his name. And if he says, "Yeah, Cameron, I got you covered," now you have my name. So that's the kind of evidence and information that you'll get from audio that video by itself wouldn't give you. So you're helping investigations there. Retail in particular also has great concern about internal loss or fraud, any kind of shrink, any kind of theft that might go on at the point of sale. And so we've seen audio tied into point of sale information to review open drawers Did someone void a transaction, but the merchandise walked off anyway? Did someone enter a manual discount? Let's use the audio feed to find out what exactly happened and determine, was this a customer service thing, or is there some kind of theft or fraud going on that we need to review? Same kind of thing happens in quick service restaurants. We use the broadest definition here of retail and QSRs. Again, it's an area where you have an employee interacting with a customer, because that's the area where you're going to find out the most information and context if a situation happens. One thing that comes up from time to time is the question of, well, why wouldn't we use a camera with a built-in mic? And it's a fair question. The thing to consider in most cases, well, two things. One is proximity, two is placement. So think about where your cameras typically go in an installation. We do a lot of work with bank teller windows and bank lobbies. And in those cases, you have a camera that is behind a teller's shoulder, or you have a camera in the corner of a lobby ceiling, and they're some distance away from what they're monitoring. They're 15, 20 feet. And in that case, if you have a microphone that's 15, 20 or 20 feet away versus one that's a few feet away, you're just going to get better pickup with the microphone that's closer. On top of that, any sound that is in between the people talking that you're trying to pick up and where the microphone on a built-in camera is, that closer sound is going to drown out what you want to hear. And then that's just by the proximity to the microphone. The second consideration is that when cameras go up in a corner of a ceiling, think about what sound does in a corner. And you can, if you cup your hands over your mouth, you can hear this effect where sound starts to reverberate and it starts to echo a little bit. And what that does is just degrade the intelligibility of the audio feed. So again, both of these things are solved by using an external mic that's placed closer to the sound that you want to hear versus one that is built into cameras. So let's look at how our technology with SoundSecure works with Watchdog cameras and works with Spectrum. Frankly, the simple answer is you just plug it in. Watchdog has done a great job making the audio interface very straightforward. For our part, here we have an example with a turret camera. You see one of our microphones here, and you just run shielded cable and use this little adapter that comes in the box to plug it into the audio in. I want to say that something like 80% of Watchdog cameras have audio support, certainly for two-way audio. So generally, there isn't a concern about, hey, I'm using this kind of camera, either a turret or a dome or indoor or outdoor, or whatever your choice is, to have a camera that's compatible with audio, that supports audio. You can see a lot more information, installation tutorials, wiring diagrams, all that information on our website at sound-secure.com. We have a tutorial specific to installation with Digital Watchdog on there in our resource library. So afterwards, you can click over and take a look. But honestly, you run power to the mic, it draws 20 or 30 milliamps at 12 volts, so it's hardly anything. Run shielded cable. Shielded cable is important because it prevents any kind of electromagnetic interference. If you have an audio setup and you are hearing static or hissing that's coming over the audio feed, two things might be happening. One is probably the cable is picking up some kind of interference. The second thing is you might just need to run an extra ground wire. So very, very easy fixes to any kind of audio issue that you might have. And generally those are very quick to solve. Here we see an image of the camera GUI. So when you log into the camera through the browser, you see where to set up the audio controls. This is the camera page for the turret cam shown on the previous slide. And you see on the left-hand panel, under the image menu, you see the video and audio link. Click there, make sure the audio is enabled here. On the audio type, you see line in. That's important when you're selecting the microphone. A line level microphone needs power. If you see an option for a mic level microphone, it's an option that is passive or doesn't need power. I want to say that all Watchdog cameras are line in, which is more of the standard than a mic level. But that's something that if you've got a question about which mic to use, just reach out to us and we can solve that for you in just a few seconds. Generally, what will happen is someone will call and say, "Hey, I'm using this model of camera. What mic do I need?" We just pull up a spec sheet and let you know. That's an easy conversation. Now, here's some new information and a sneak peek of an upcoming feature in Spectrum. As an audio guy, especially a hardware guy, it's kind of rare that I get excited for new VMS features, but this is one I think is pretty cool. And you'll see a few different use cases for these new features. So number one, make sure that checkbox on the right-hand side is clicked in Spectrum. So make sure the camera supports the audio, or rather the camera has audio enabled, and then you've also enabled audio within Spectrum. The feature here is that you can take a camera with an audio input, so an audio feed from camera number one, and then assign it to camera number two when you're viewing that in Spectrum. You can also do that with the audio out. So if you're monitoring camera number one and want to send out an alert or an announcement, you can do that and assign it to camera number two in this case. Why would you want to do that? Well, there's a few use cases here where, let's say you have a default view in a camera feed is for a busy lobby area, lots of ambient noise, right? But you don't want to hear all that ambient noise because you can't pick up any kind of information or conversation. It's just a lot of environmental sound. But let's say you have a back entrance that is dead quiet and you want to know if there's activity there, but you don't want to toggle between your camera views, or you don't want to have a multi-screen set up. You can just have that mic from the backdoor camera tied into your lobby view. And now you can get the sound from an area. So you're monitoring with audio, you're monitoring a different area with video. Or in an installation, if it's just not practical to run your wiring for a mic or a speaker to a camera because of any kind of building infrastructure layout, or the cable runs are just impractical, or you got to go through a concrete wall to do it, or some other concern, here we've solved the problem because you can wire it into a different camera that's easier to run a cable path to, and then assign that live feed to the camera that you're monitoring more often. Again, two-way capable. This is something that I'm sure Paul and Patrick can give a little bit more information on the ways to enable it, the ways to set this up in Spectrum, and a release date. I think it's coming out in the next few weeks, but I'll defer to Patrick and Paul on those kinds of information. So here are a few tips on how to get started using audio. You can find this on our website, and we like to think of ourselves as a product line that you don't need to spend a lot of brain power on because we've already simplified the installation for you. And if folks are very experienced in video, but maybe are new to using sound with video systems, these are a few steps that you can follow. Number one, like I mentioned, make sure you have the right mic signal type. Again, this is a very, very fast phone call for us to help you make sure you've picked the right mic, rather than you say, I think this is the right one, I order it, and it turns out to be the wrong incompatible signal. We can head that off at the pass before it even happens. One note at the end of this number one item here is you'll see usually mics for security systems are omnidirectional. I mean, they're picking up in a 360-degree pattern. The reason for that is that in a security event, you don't always know which direction it's happening in, right? As opposed to, say, a microphone for a singer, where you know where the sound's coming from, right? So you hold up the mic and you just want that pickup pattern right there, and you don't want any ambient noise. Or say a mic that someone will clip on for a TV interview. You know right where that audio is coming from, so you can optimize. In security systems, you don't always know that. So you want to have generally an omnidirectional microphone so you can pick up all that area. And there's a kind of a balance point that we found with our mic pickup area where you're covering a wide area, but not introducing too much background noise. You'll see some microphones have crazy big pickup areas. There are some applications where that makes sense. If you're at a perimeter protection on a border, and there's nothing going on anywhere, well, have a big pickup area. You're not going to introduce any kind of sound. For our common installations, like you saw in previous slides, at a point, all you're introducing is more ambient noise, and that's going to degrade your intelligibility. So there's a bit of a balancing point in your layout that we can help with to say, here's generally the pickup pattern and pickup area that you want to have, so you can isolate the zone that you're trying to cover. This speaks into number 2, is the placement. Again, you want to have the mic 5 to 10 feet from the sound that you're trying to hear. So in a case of a interview room, for example, an interview room is 6 by 6, 8 by 8. They're not very large. So you can have one mic generally installed in the ceiling that will cover that whole area, right? The flip side of that, or the inverse, is when you're looking at speaker layout. You know the dispersion pattern of the speaker and how far it will go, so you can help lay out to make sure you have proper coverage. One note here, I see this from time to time and always chuckle to myself, is don't put a mic next to an air conditioning vent. You're just going to hear air whooshing over it. You're going to hear all the sounds of the vibration of the vent cover. You're just going to give yourself a headache doing that. So just make sure you're away from an air vent. Any kind of source of interference, like a fluorescent light, you want to avoid. Again, this is something that we can help you with on the audio layouts. Use shielded cable, please, because that will help prevent any interference from those fluorescent lights that I mentioned. And then in your camera setup, like we showed on prior slides, just make sure the audio is enabled. Those check boxes are clicked, otherwise you're not going to hear anything. The last part here is something that we hear from time to time about, hey, I heard audio, you can record it in this state, but not this other state, or it's a one-party consent state versus an all-party consent state. This is something that we were discussing prior to the webinar kicking off, and it's something that I can talk until I'm out of breath about. But the short answer is to always, our recommendation is to always give that notification that audio is being used, regardless of if you're in a one-party consent state or an all-party consent state. Audio is used in all 50 states, regardless of party consent. If you think of a 1-800 customer service line, all right, they have call centers in every state in the country. People in every state of the country call centers. And the first thing you hear when you call a customer support line is, this call is recorded for training or for quality. I'm in California. We're an all-party consent state. I call customer service from time to time, and I hear that I'm being recorded, and I stay on the line and I don't object to it. And they use it because I've been notified about it. When I logged on to this webinar this morning, there was an announcement and a little pop-up notification that said this webinar is being recorded. Click OK. I click OK. So there are ways to remove that expectation of privacy that might exist depending on your environment. Again, this is something that we can help give you some best practices on. But the short answer is, if you've got a question about, hey, I'm in Florida, or I'm in New York, or I'm in wherever you are, we can help you, refer to the actual state statute. On our website, Resource Center, again, at sound-secure.com, there is a state-by-state guide where you just say, okay, I'm in Nevada, and here's what the state statute is, and I can look it up. The other part of that is that there's some common sense applications. So I mentioned cell phones earlier at the outset. Let's say you go on a vacation with your kids to Disneyland or Disney World or somewhere in California or Florida. The reason I picked California and Florida is they're both all-party consent states. And I see my kids doing something fun at Disneyland, so I take a video on my cell phone, and my phone's going to record audio automatically. Did I just break the law? No, of course not. That's a silly example, right? So there are considerations that go into, is there an expectation of privacy for recording in a given environment? And if you give that notification of audio in use, then you've removed that expectation of privacy. People can't really say, I'm being listened to or I'm being eavesdropped on, if you've already told them that there's audio going on, right? So we always recommend, through one way, shape, or form, give that notification of audio being in use. And if you've got a specific question about, your given customer base or a given use case that you're working on, glad to talk with you about that further. A lot of these answers to frequently asked questions for audio are available on our website resource center, again at sound-secure.com. We have this handy guide for audio for security systems or sound for security systems that is geared towards showing the most common uses of sound with video systems, the best practices for installing it, and also some product information so you know how our technology hooks up with Watchdog cameras and is enabled through Spectrum. So with that, before we open it up to any questions that you all have, my ask for everyone today is that when you have opportunities to use audio with video, either by project specification or it's an opportunity to upsell your customers, please reach out to us. And by us, I mean both SoundSecure and Digital Watchdog. We've got a very close relationship together, both me and Patrick personally, our team with the Watchdog inside sales team down in Cerritos. They're familiar with our technology. They have sample equipment. We have demo Watchdog cameras here. So we can jointly make sure everything is designed correctly so that when it comes time for installation and deployment, you don't find any curveballs or hiccups or run into any issues. All you got to do is hook it up and plug it in and install, and you're set to go. So thank you for joining this morning. I hope I've given you an informative overview of how we work with Digital Watchdog Spectrum, and happy to take some questions.
So Cameron, I'll just add to one of the things that you said. On our website, we have what we call the product selector, particularly where you can go and find IP cameras by certain attributes and features. So there's a filter underneath features that is audio, which is going to have a line in and line out connection that the SoundSecure product will work with. So it's as easy as going to the product selector, selecting features, selecting audio, and that'll give you the list of all the cameras that we have audio. And yeah, you're right. I think it's over 80% at this point that have audio on board. One of the questions that did come up was, where can you purchase SoundSecure?
We are available through most major security distributors, ADI, Annixter, a handful of regional distributors as well. If you're not able to find our product line through the same channel that you get your cameras, just reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction. But most major security distributors carry our line.
Okay. Well, as usual, your comprehensive presentation has yielded 0 questions because you covered everything. But anybody out there have any questions, by all means, submit them.
I like good audio jokes too, if you have any of those. All ears. Pun intended.
Paul, anything? Anything Cameron missed, because he's pretty comprehensive there.
Yeah, I didn't have anything. I liked, you showed one of our MT cameras, one of our turret cameras, and maybe I think you have a guide on your site on wiring it up for in and out, and like in Spectrum, you click a checkbox for two-way audio, and you have a little button where your camera goes up, and you press the button and you talk, release it, and you can hear the other side.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that too is, when you're using a Watchdog camera, and if 80% plus of them support audio or support two-way audio, you already have this function there. You already bought the function for audio. Right. Enable it, use it, right? Yeah. Because it's already built into the camera. So you're going to augment your security system and have all these new capabilities just by attaching these peripheral devices.
It's also the value add, and as customers. Joe has a question.
Hi, Joe.
Do you have anything new coming later this year?
Yes, but nothing to announce quite yet.
Any hints? Like Joe wants a hint.
Yeah,
Joe wants a hint?
Paul, I would jump in and say that Cameron just came out with the amplifier product.
We did just come out with the amplifier product. That was released just before ISP West in March. We are looking to, I will give you a sneak peek and say that look for more products that integrate really well with Spectrum. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Yes, I can attest to that. Yeah, I think, all right. Well, Cameron, I want to thank you for joining us today. As I started off with, we love working with SoundSecure and the applications. There was one application actually that reminded me and you mentioned banking, and you mentioned mostly in the lobby, but actually I was at a customer site or dealing with a customer earlier this week where the ATMs were getting hit, and the ATMs are getting, particularly the outdoor ATM is getting, yanked out of the wall.
Yeah.
And, loitering analytics was one of the things we talked about, but definitely top down is that loitering analytic triggering to the central station to communicate and talk down through DW Spectrum was kind of the solution there.
Yeah, and so we've seen a handful of installations, especially in the South. I don't know if it's a regional thing or that's just where our installations are, where there are guys driving up at 3 a.m. with a pickup truck, wrapping a chain around an outdoor ATM, and then driving off with the whole machine.
Yeah, that's mostly Florida.
Yeah, that makes a lot of noise, right? So through either a sound level detector or another type of analytic, and I imagine in most cases there's not a lot of activity at outdoor ATMs at 3 a.m. or a lot of normal activity, I should say. And so you get an alert. You have a talk down capability that either says, "Hey, get out of here." You have the lighting that I mentioned to just flood the area with bright white light so that folks know that they're being monitored. And it's a very powerful deterrent effect. In the instance that we had worked on, between the actual cost of the machine that's being stolen and however much money is in the machine, the particular client that we were talking with said their loss per theft is between $50,000 and $150,000.
Yeah.
So if you can use some peripheral technology to prevent a theft of $150,000, you're going to show a huge return for your customers.
Exactly. All right. Well, that was awesome. Thank you, Cameron. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Paul. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good day.